Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel, also known as Ituzo with D&B Academy, and in today's video I'm going to be teaching you how to make tracks like the artist on Love for Low Frequencies. So without further ado, let's get into the project. So before we get started, let's go ahead and listen to the track. Cool. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at is going to be the drums. Let's start with the kick and the snare. Okay, so just a standard kick and snare pattern here. I have the kick set at -2 and the snare set at -2.5 dB. Okay, so all of the sounds that you're going to hear today in this project are part of Molecular's D&B Academy sample pack. And you can go ahead and check that out on our website. So for the kick, I believe it's just a one-shot kick sample. So for the kick sample, it's actually a kick one-shot straight out of the pack. And for the snare, I've chosen it out of a drum loop. And again, I didn't transpose this one at all. So this is pretty just straightforward out of the pack. I didn't have to post-process it at all. All I've done was modify the volume of the samples. So let's go on over to the tops now. And for the first hi-hat, I have it so that it repeats every 4 bars. And for the second hi-hat, I have it on the 3rd beat. So this is what the first tops loop sounds like. And we're going to go on to the second tops loop now. And for this one, I've chosen a splashy cymbal loop. But I've actually drawn in the fade of the volume every time the kick comes in. So it's kind of a manual sidechain what's going on here. And this is what that sounds like. So as you can hear, the volume of the cymbals are ducking every time that the kick comes in. And the other sample that I put on the second tops loop is a reverse cymbal. Now this might sound a bit warped, but I've chosen to keep it like this. Just because of the texture. And the other hi-hat sound that I have here is actually a faster tops loop. When it becomes faster here, I've just doubled the time here. And I've also chosen to preserve the transients with a percentage of 0. So this is why it sounds very tight. And what you're hearing is just the very beginning of the transients on the hi-hats. So let's listen to the drum kit all together now, along with the ghost snares that I've added here. Cool. So apart from the tops, I've just added a couple of the ghost hits here. So this is the same snare as the main one. I've just shortened the decay of it, and I have it just before the kick here. And for the second ghost hit is just a perk from a perk loop out of the pack as well. And this is in the same position. So apart from the ghost snares, I want to go ahead and show you the intro and the FX that I've used. So for the effects here, I have the main kick and snare resampled, along with a M flanger VST put onto it. I believe I've just chosen a preset from inside the flanger VST with the depth set at 100%, 35 dry, the range at 1.4 milliseconds, and the feedback of around 90.5. I believe I haven't changed anything, so you could go ahead and find this preset yourself. Then for the second effect that we have here, it's just a small hybrid reverb that is automating from 0% all the way up to 19% with a decay at 408 milliseconds. And at the end here, I have a limiter so it catches any peak with a ceiling set at minus 2.06 dB. So the flanger is the one that's giving it that main texture at this point. Then I just have some risers here, another effects just with the volume faded, and I have them repeating during the drop. For the main impact hit right here, I have the reverb on it, but instead of having the flat and the cut turned on, I have it so that it freezes, and I have the dry wet parameter automated. So it starts at 100% and it goes all the way down to 0%. I'll go ahead and show you what this sounds like. So because of this reverb, the sound is staying in time and it doesn't just end where the sample ends. So if I don't automate the dry wet parameter, it just goes on forever. So I do recommend that you close it off down to 0% whenever you want the sound to stop. So that would be it for the effects bus. Let's hear the intro ambient bus now. So for the first effects here, I have the Tal Dub VST, quite cool dub delay that you can find. This is my go-to dub delay for whenever I want those classic delays in my tunes. And I have it set to the Dream delay, and I'm using dotted notes, and I have the parameter set at 1/16. Apart from that, I believe I've just modified the feedback here and the delay and filter parameters. So that is the only VST on this track. For the other one, I just have it straight out of the sample pack as well. I'm using effects. You can see it's effects 02, and down here it is a musical hit, where I'm just automating the volume and I am fading the samples into each other. So as soon as one ends, it is fading onto the other one. So if you can see here, Ableton lets you fade the sample onto the other one so that you can seamlessly loop these samples and there would be no click in between them or no silence. Then for the fourth element of the intro, it is also a musical hit. And I'm doing the same thing here with the fades, and I have a sidechain on the bus channel. So as you can see here, it has the sidechain turned on, and every time that the kick comes in, this whole bus ducks down in volume. So this is the movement that you can hear in the intro. And then I just have them lower down in volume when the filtered break comes in. So let's move on to the bass bus now. For the basses, I believe I've chosen 5 or 6 bass samples out of the pack, and I've just post-processed them all differently. The main movement is coming from auto filters set on each of these bass samples, and then I have some post-processing on the bass bus itself. So let's go and review the first bass that I've chosen. Cool. So for this one, it's actually two bass samples. I have one of them here at the left and another at the right, and I'm using this fade in trick here as well. So if we separate both of these samples, they're actually different bass samples, but in the same note. So I've chosen a part that I like from each of them, and I've fused them together with this fade in. And so let me just go ahead and show you what its sample sounds like by itself. And by combining both of them, I have made this. Just with a very harsh attack, and I just wanted that low end from the second bass sample. So apart from that, I have some wave shaping going on. I'm using the image line wave shaper with a mellow curve here, and after the wave shaper, I am using the thermal VST. So on the thermal VST, I'm just using the Beefy Digits preset. So you can go ahead and find that just straight out of the VST. And that would be it for the first bass sample. So for the second bass sample that I've chosen for this loop, it is bass 27. And the main movement here is coming from the filter that I've automated. So this is just like a triplet LFO that I've drawn in. Cool, so for this bass sample, I'm just automating the cutoff frequency of the filter here. So I'm automating how the filter opens and closes. And you can see the automation here that just repeats itself every time the sample comes in. And for the post-processing, I have the kilohertz shaper table. And this is a new VST that I recommend. It's a really cool distortion and shaper plugin. Apart from that, I have the glue compressor at the end with the soft clipping turned on, so it doesn't go above 0. Now, if we hear the sample without the autofilter, you can hear that it changes pitch. So on this sample, I have it set to -1 semitones, and on the other one, I just have it at the original pitch. So it really changes when you choose to play around with the autofilter and give it the movement. And that would be it for the second bass sound. Now for the third bass that I've chosen, it is just the beginning of the bass sample, and I put a hybrid reverb onto it with the decay at 592 milliseconds, the size at 78%, and the damping at 100%. So the dry wet is at 32%, and I've just got it with a thermal VST. And the preset inside the VST that I'm using is ripped apart, with the dry wet set at around 12%. Now if we turn the thermal off, you're going to hear that it sounds quite different. So it's getting a lot more excited, and I love the harmonics that thermal brings onto this bass. So again, I just have the soft clipping here turned on inside the glue compressor with the makeup gain turned up to 0.32 dB. So I've just chosen moments that I've liked within these bass loops, and I went ahead and manipulated them to the point where I've liked them. For the fourth bass that I have here, it's actually reverse bass. And I have some erosion with the frequency at 8.69 kilohertz, the width at 0.63, and the amount at 58.1. Then I have the shaper table VST with the party foul preset, and that would be it. I have the amp at the end with the output at dual, and I am using the boost setting. The dry wet is at 22.2, and let me go ahead and show you what the sample sounds like without the post-processing. So now let's move on to the fifth bass. So on the fifth bass, I've done a similar method to the second bass here, but it is just a shorter one. And I have the movement set here with the auto filter. So it opens up and then it closes. And I have an amp with the output set to mono, and I am using clean setting. The dry wet is at 39.7, and let me go ahead and show you what it sounds like without the post-processing. Again, that's it for this bass. Now let's move on to the last bass of the loop. Now for the last bass, I've cut out all the low end out of it. I wanted it to be more of a mid texture. So you can see the EQ here cut at 255 Hertz, and the auto filter is actually cutting the high end of it as well. And the main movement is coming from the auto filter. I have the LFO turned on with the triangular shape and the rate at 1/32. So the rate, as you can hear, is quite fast. And that would be all of the post-processing for the bass samples that I've chosen. So now let's move on to the bass bus, and you can see what kind of post-processing I have onto it, so that the thermal here and the glue compressor is affecting all of the basses within this group. So I have the thermal here, and it is set to the exponential drive preset, with the drive set at around 54 or 55%, and the more macro here set at 85%. I have the dry wet at 100, and then I have the glue compressor with the soft clipping turned on and the makeup gain of 0.32 dB. So if we listen to all these basses all together now, this is what they would sound like. Okay, so let's listen to the loop one more time. So that would be it for this video. Again, my name is Emmanuel, also known as Yatuza with D&B Academy. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.